Ancient fears that still control your relationships. You say you want love, intimacy, trust, stability. But your brain? It still thinks connection is dangerous, so it sabotages the very thing you crave. Let's talk about the ancient fears that are still ruining your relationships. Rejection equals death. They don't text back. It's been 20 minutes. Nothing dramatic happened. No argument, no conflict, just silence. And yet, your chest tightens. Your thoughts spiral. You scan every word you sent, wondering if you said something wrong. You feel ridiculous for overreacting, but your body disagrees. Your heart rate is up. You can't focus. You feel unsafe. And the worst part? A small part of you is already preparing for abandonment, for everything to collapse just because of a pause. But here's the twist. You're not overreacting. You're reacting exactly how your ancient brain was wired to respond. Thousands of years ago, rejection wasn't just awkward, it was fatal. In a tribal world, being left out of the group meant no food, no fire, no shelter. Being exiled meant predators, exposure, and likely death. So our ancestors developed a hypersensitive alert system to detect disapproval or distance fast. That system kept them alive, and now it's living in you. So when someone ignores your message, cancels last minute, or says, "We need to talk," your brain doesn't process it as mild discomfort. It processes it as, "You're about to die." The social rejection alarm gets pulled, and the whole system goes into lockdown. Fight, flight, freeze, overthink. You tell yourself it's just a modern relationship, just dating, just one person, but your nervous system isn't interested in modern logic. It's running a program that hasn't been updated since the Stone Age. That's why it feels so dramatic, why even minor rejection burns like betrayal, why someone pulling away can feel like the world is ending, because your body thinks you've just been kicked out of the tribe. And the tribe was safety. You can't explain it to yourself in words, but you feel it in your gut, in your breath, in your inability to let go. You think it's neediness. It's not. It's instinct. Ancient, raw, automatic. So no, you're not weak. You're not clingy. You're just human. And your humanity still carries echoes of a world where disconnection meant death. But here's the good news. You're not in that world anymore. You're allowed to feel the fear without believing it. You're allowed to pause without spiraling. You're allowed to be disappointed and still safe. Rejection still hurts. Of course it does. But you're not dying. You're just remembering. And with that awareness, you can start telling your brain not every silence is a threat. Not every delay is a disaster. And not every no means you won't survive. Vulnerability feels like a threat, not a bond. You tell yourself you want intimacy, real connection, someone to truly see you, but the second it starts to happen, you flinch, you pull back, you change the subject, you make a joke, you ghost them, whatever it takes to get out of that moment where someone might see behind the curtain. Because somewhere in your nervous system, vulnerability doesn't feel like bonding. It feels like exposure. And exposure used to get people killed. In ancient tribes, showing weakness was risky. Crying, hesitating, saying, "I'm scared," all of that could make you a liability. And the tribe didn't protect liabilities. They left them behind. So we learned, fast, show strength, be useful, keep the soft stuff buried. Vulnerability didn't equal connection. It equaled risk. Now it's 2025 and nobody's hunting you with spears, but your brain doesn't know that. Your brain still thinks opening up means losing safety, that if someone really sees who you are, your doubts, your trauma, your weird insecurities, they'll leave. Or worse, they'll use it against you. So you keep it all locked down. You share just enough to pass as deep, but never enough to actually be known. You're not afraid of love. You're afraid of being seen. Because if they see you and walk away, that confirms the thing you've always feared. That maybe, just maybe, you're too much or not enough. So you perform. You curate. You edit your personality like a social media post, cutting out the messy parts. Not because you're fake, but because you're trying to survive. You tell yourself it's about standards, that you're just being cautious, but underneath all the logic is something raw, the fear that real intimacy will cost you safety, and your brain would rather be alone and in control than open and at risk. The irony is, real connection requires exactly what you're avoiding. Vulnerability is the doorway to closeness, to belonging. But to walk through it, you have to put down your armor. And your brain hates that idea. Armor kept you alive, but it's also kept you alone. Here's the truth. You don't have to trauma dump on a first date. You don't have to spill everything. But you do have to practice staying. Sitting in the discomfort, letting someone in slowly, feeling that fear and not running. Because your nervous system might panic, but your future self needs this. You can't bond from behind a mask, and you don't have to be perfectly healed to be held. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the bridge. And yeah, crossing it feels dangerous, but isolation is more dangerous. Your fight or flight response is running your love life. You say you're just organized, just detail-oriented, just like things a certain way. But deep down, you know it's more than that. You don't just plan, you cling. You don't just prefer structure, you panic without it. Every unread message, every delayed reply, every slight change in tone pulls you into a mental spiral because beneath that polished calm is one ancient fear. Chaos means danger. Control isn't your personality, it's your coping mechanism. In the wild, predictability meant survival. If you knew when the sun rose, where the food was, who had your back, you lived. If things changed too fast, you died. So our brains evolved to seek patterns, routines, certainty, safety. The unknown? That was the predator's domain, and your brain still remembers. Fast forward a few thousand years, and here you are trying to micromanage your relationship like it's a mission briefing. You don't just want to know how they feel, you want to predict it. You read texts like they're encrypted. You overthink pauses. You create backup plans for emotional storms that haven't happened yet. You don't love with an open heart. You love with a fire escape already mapped. But here's the problem. People aren't predictable, and love isn't safe. So the very thing you're trying to control, connection, starts slipping through your fingers. Because you're not really in the relationship. You're in your head, playing chess against future disasters that might never come. Protecting yourself from a heartbreak that hasn't even happened. You think you're managing reality, but really you're managing fear. And fear makes terrible rules. You start avoiding anything you can't control. People who don't text back fast enough, moments that feel too real, too raw. You shrink your world to make it manageable and end up alone in it. But the worst part? You call it self-respect. You tell yourself you're just setting boundaries, when really you're building walls around your nervous system. You're not cold, you're scared. And fear disguised as control doesn't just limit your joy, it strangles it. What if you stop treating unpredictability like a threat? What if you let a few things stay messy, unplanned, human? Because love is chaos, and sometimes the only way to feel truly safe is to stop trying so hard. Control feels comforting, but it's also exhausting. And the more you grip, the more everything slips. What you really want isn't control, it's trust. But trust can't grow in a cage. It needs risk. It needs space. It needs the unknown. You don't need to let everything go, just enough to breathe again.
Because life isn't a checklist. And love was never meant to be a controlled experiment. It's messy, terrifying, alive. And if you can stomach the chaos, even just a little, you might finally feel the peace your rules never gave you. You keep picking familiar pain, not healthy love. You say you want love, real love, the kind that feels like home. But when it shows up, warm, gentle, open, something inside you flinches. You question it, distrust it, push it away. Not because you don't care, but because somewhere along the way, your nervous system learned love is not safe. You don't crave chaos, but it feels familiar. Stability feels foreign. Kindness feels suspicious. When someone treats you with softness, your body tenses like it's a trick, because softness, in your past, often came before the storm. And that's the tragedy of survival mode. It rewires your brain to treat peace as danger, and danger as normal. You learned how to survive, not how to receive. You learned to scan for red flags, not sit with green ones. You memorized the patterns of withdrawal, gaslighting, control, and now anything different feels off, foreign, maybe even boring. You've mistaken adrenaline for affection, trauma bonding for intimacy, emotional highs and lows for passion. Because when survival is your default setting, anything calm feels like a threat to your programming. You're not alone in this. A lot of people confuse survival with strength. They say, "I've been through worse," like it's a badge. But resilience isn't the same as regulation. Just because you can endure pain doesn't mean you know how to feel safe. Just because you can love others doesn't mean you know how to let yourself be loved. So when a relationship comes along that doesn't trigger the old alarms, no games, no tension, no chasing, your brain panics. It doesn't know what to do with peace. It thinks it missed something. You start inventing danger, overthinking kindness, sabotaging closeness. Not because you're broken, but because your body still thinks it's in a war. You can't heal that overnight. You can't logic your way out of a primal response, but you can notice it. You can name it. You can start separating real threat from remembered threat. And most importantly, you can stop blaming yourself for flinching at what you say you want. Love can feel unsafe when all you've known is survival, but that doesn't mean it is unsafe. It means your body needs time to learn a new story. And here's the good news. Safety is learnable. It comes from small moments, a calm conversation, a steady presence, someone showing up and not leaving. It comes from people who make you feel like your nervous system can breathe, who don't reward your silence, but invite your truth. It doesn't start with trusting others. It starts with trusting yourself, to stay, to feel, to not run when it gets real. Love isn't supposed to feel like a fight. It's not supposed to require armor. It's supposed to meet the part of you that's tired of always being on edge and say, "You can rest now." Not because you've earned it, but because you were never meant to survive love. You were meant to feel it. You're not broken. You're just following a survival script that's thousands of years old. But now you can rewrite it. Real connection doesn't start when you find the right person. It starts when you stop letting fear pick for you.